Okay, can you hear me? Okay, great, thank you.
On their YouTube channel for the family will be able to call in for. Not ready?
Ready.
Yeah. So obviously we're a little bit early though, because I'm going to Korea.
Oh,
No, not saying.
Okay, so we'll be Korea. Together. Okay. These are the three of them. All others, and he has plenty of copies. Everyone else will put it on your right hand. That's the one. Oh, sure.
That's right, it's a tradition.
Only the children wear it over there. There's a little spot at the very bottom of the rib. Put your fingers on either side of that. Say with me. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Dayan ha'emet. Praise to you, Adonai, our God,
These are you, Adonai, our God.
creator of the universe. That's true. And it's a not oh God, praise God at the time of loss. And it's a God study truth. And that's the first generation of question. What are the parameters? Not just history of fact. fruit of the Spirit. Blessed. Venture, learn, teaching, and everything. The ducks go out. Right? It's photographs, anything. That was his job. And it's going to be brought. So, we got some chairs that are.
Wait, do I have one?
This is Stacy. share prayer.
I'm not a close family member. I like it very much.
Yeah, make sure my son's not wrong.
Yeah.
Folks, this would be a good time next year. Your cell phones are turned off.
Oh, but I need mine on. I have notes. Finger is on. Yeah, it's on.
For those who are here and those who are online, we say, Bruchim Habeim B'Shem Adonai. Praise are you. You're here to be on a sacred mission. Abayat Hamed, to make sure that Arnie Lash has been laid to rest with dignity and love, surrounded by those who did love him and was a part of his world. And you're here, of course, to bring comfort to the family. Russell and Jennifer and Eileen and the whole family. Their expressions of sympathy are deep and heartfelt. And we hope that those of you who are here know that all of those online and throughout the community, there are those who are having a heavy heart right now. It's hard to believe that a man with such passion and enthusiasm, keep going back to those words. And that's what Arnie was, a man filled with passion and enthusiasm. He's gone. In this world right now that's so racked with despair and people losing hope because of the distances that we've had and the masks that we have to wear, he was one who continued to have enthusiasm and passion. Until the very end, he was planning on next trips with you, Eileen, and with the family, and just hoping to learn more, to teach more, to be involved more. And so to say goodbye, finally, after this terrible and difficult battle with which he engaged so heroically, it's something that has touched each and every one of us in the community and certainly the family. And so for that, I wanted to invite everyone to share your voices, your words. And we have copies of the prayers that we're going to share so that online, and it'll be recorded, right, Kenny? So that you'll have copies of it as well to know that your voices were a part of this tribute to this man who was a good neshama, a good soul. So let us start on that first page to know that even in the most difficult of times, we will remember. We read responsively. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember him. In the opening of buds and the rebirth of spring, we remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember him. One of the friends that Arnie has made in his time in Denver is Rabbi David Zucker, who is here to share a special song.
Esa Einai El Heharim, Me'ayan Yavo Ezri, Ezri Me'im Adonai, Oseh Shamayim Ha'aretz, Al Yitain Lamot Vodlecha, Al Yanim Shomrecha. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protection will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever.
Thank you, Rabbi. On the second page, we read the 23rd Psalm in which it speaks words that Arnie lived to the fullest, and that was, though I walk through that valley of the shadow of death, I'm not going to live in fear. And he didn't. Holy moly. I mean, at every step along the way, he was making his plans and said, this is what's going to happen. And then I'll get through this and they'll shrink that. And then we'll take care of this. And then back to normal until the last bit. He did not live in fear. He was practical too. And he knew that the time was limited because the diagnosis was such. But that didn't throw him a curveball. He said, well, then let me take advantage of every moment I can. And he did. He just didn't get as many opportunities that he wanted. And so in Hebrew on page 2, Mizmola David Adonai ro'i lo echsar bino deshi yad bitzeni. Amei minochot yan chaleni. Nafshi yoshevev. Yan cheni b'magalei tzedek l'ma'an shmo gam ki elek b'geitz hamavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha mishantecha chema yanachamuni. Karot lefanai shochan neged tzorarai. Teshanta v'shem roshi kasuravaya. Tov v'chesed lefuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'beit Adonai le'orech yamim. Let us say together a psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, my shaman. God enables me to lie down in green pastures and lead me beside still waters. God restores my soul and guides me in paths of righteousness for the sake of the divine. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Kohelet said, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven. And we say together, a time for being born, a time for dying, a time for planting and a time for uprooting the planted, a time for slaying, a time for healing, a time for tearing down and a time for building up, a time for weeping, a time for laughing, a time for grieving, a time for dancing, a time for throwing stones, and a time for gathering stones together, a time for embracing and a time for refraining from embracing, a time for seeking, a time for losing, a time for keeping and a time for letting go, a time for tearing and a time for sowing, a time for silence and a time for speaking. The time for tearing preceded the service in which we tore Kriya, a sign of mourning. The sowing, the healing, that happens with the words and the memories that we hear and treasure and share. And so I'd like to call first Jennifer, his daughter, to share a few words about Dan.
Okay. So, I was trying to find the words for today, and my cousin wrote me something today, and thank you, Josh. That really summed it up for me well. Not all heroes wear capes. He was my hero. He's always been my hero. He taught me so much about the world and how to live in it, how to follow adventure, how to try everything once. You never know. Just not the guinea pig in Peru. That was a mistake. He was my best friend for a very long time. Probably my whole life. The one I would go to for advice. He shaped who I am and who I wanted to be. He was a really good man. And he cared. He was smart, and he made me want to be all those things. I will miss him. I miss him. And I love him. He deserves to be remembered well.
I'm going to give a little background about Arnie. He was born July 9th, 1948 in Brooklyn, the youngest son of Morris and Beatrice. His brother Alan was 9 years older. Alan passed some years ago. Arnie excelled both academically and athletically at the prestigious Brooklyn Tech High School. He played just about every sport and especially loved football and swimming. Breaststroke was his specialty. He attended Hofstra, majored in industrial design. But after graduation, he soon found his career calling in the pharmaceutical business. His early career was with Marion Labs, and then that eventually became Marion Merrill Dow. After earning a master's degree in business management at Webster University, Arnie lent his talents to a number of medical and pharmaceutical firms, including Schering Plough, IMS, which is a health and hospital healthcare institute, and Orthogen RX. His jobs frequently involved international travel, which was not a problem for Arnie. He loved to travel, and to Asia he went, into Europe, and many, many visits to Israel as well. That fed perfectly with Arnie's tireless passion for life and adventure. I first met Arnie 4 years ago when he and Eileen moved to Denver. Our friendship was nurtured on his voracious enthusiasm for learning and teaching. He enrolled in just about every class we offered, from Torah to Talmud, from halakha to history, from culture to Israel. And it will come to absolutely no one's surprise that Arnie was an active participant in every class. He would share and relate whatever we were studying to other things that he had studied. And that was both in person and online. You could always be counted on Arnie to break that uncomfortable silence that Zoom brings us. When everyone else is muted, Arnie was not muted. Yes, Arnie was all but a dissertation away from a PhD in history, and he loved to share his passion for learning. He loved learning, and he treasured his membership as well in the Masons. He was proud to have earned the exalted position of Master Mason. When you visited Arnie in the beautiful home that he and Eileen created, he bounded with that same kind of enthusiasm with his learning from room to room, showing you one treasure after the other. This favorite piece, that favorite photo, and his prized books, especially the ones from early American history, the rare books. He said, this is very valuable. And he loved them, he treasured them, he held them with such regard, and he read them, and he studied them, and he taught about them. Of course, you would also see in his home lots of owls, his favorite bird, the wise bird for a wise man. We also bonded over our love for Israel and his involvement with AIPAC. He and Eileen went to policy conferences with us to Washington, D.C. Yes, he loved it. This is a cool thing about Arnie. He loved it, but he was also disappointed. Now, how could he be disappointed? 18,000, 19,000 people cheering on Israel. He loved that part of it. But he came back with great ideas about how we could prepare our Colorado delegation even better. He'd say, Rick, we got to get the Colorado delegation. We have to learn what's going on, and we have to organize ourselves. He says, I'll host it. Eileen and I can host it, and we can develop our team. So next year, we can do even better. Mm-hmm. He was always looking to help an organization and a cause to take the next step. His love of Israel also prompted Arnie and Eileen to sponsor the building of a bomb shelter to protect the people around Sderot, a town in southern Israel that borders the Gaza Strip. He was so proud that they could make a difference for Israel, partnering with JNF, the Jewish National Fund, to protect lives. And Boaz is here, and I know how much he treasured his friendship with you and his involvement with JNF. Again, some tangible way of making a positive difference. Even as he was battling cancer. First of all, he'd show you the pictures of the shelter that they built. But even as he was battling, Arnie would talk about his plans for the next shelter. He said, I'm going to do another one, an even bigger one. He wanted to make a difference. He wanted to share in tangible ways his love of Israel, his care for the people, and how he could take care and build for the future. My last visit was just a few weeks ago to Arnie, and it was at the conclusion of Sukkot. And I brought to the hospital Etrog and Lulav. And the nurses, of course, look at you like, who are you? And it wasn't an easy day for Arnie. Towards the end, he was struggling mightily. And there was times of stress for him. But when he saw the etrog in him, he took that etrog up and he brought it to his mouth and the lulav, and we shook it in every direction. And he said the bracha with me. And even though it was difficult for him, he expressed exactly the intent. He knew that wherever he went, he brought blessings. Wherever he went, he saw blessings. He treasured blessings. And each of you were a part of his blessings. From one part of the world to the other, his family and friends knew that he was something special. But what happens with the etrog and lulav? We bring all of the different elements together. The etrog in the left hand, the lulav, the palm branch and the willow and the myrtle, all together. Individual blessings brought together. And his last words, thank you, thank you. It wasn't to me. It was a thanks to God. It was a thanks for you, because you've been his blessings. And I think of all of the things that he would hope is that you will always remember him as a blessing and treasure the time that you shared together. I'm going to go back just a little bit because we're going to make the transition right to where Eileen's going to come into his life. Arnie had a blessed love with Carol, and his love was blessed then with Russell and with Jennifer. After Carol passed away so tragically at the hospital, so unexpectedly, all seemed dark and sad for Arnie. Even with all of his passion for life and learning, how could he ever recover? Well, he recovered slowly and surely in time with new friendship that blossomed into love. And that's the story of Eileen and Arnie. So with that, Eileen, I ask you if you will please share.
Arnie and I connected in Pennsylvania in the fall of 2013 on Match.com. From our first in-person meeting, we knew it was Bashir. We were meant to be together. We found our soulmate. We read each other's thoughts. We answered each other's questions before they were asked. We loved being together. We married December 6th, 2014. It was the second marriage for both of us. It took us a long time to pick out our ketubah because we wanted it to have real meaning over the coming years. We vowed to each other, where you shall go, I shall go. The ketubah framed our time together, and I took some lines from it. Who would I be without you? Without you, I stand on my own. But with you, I stand tall. I have confidence, I am assured. Without you, I merely exist, but with you in my life has meaning. My years have joy and my days have happiness. Without you, I am a good person, but with you, I am special. I am inspired. I am better than I know I could be. You are the sun in my days and the moon in my darkest nights. You are the brightness in my universe. I trust in you. You are my champion, my counselor, my friend, my love. I will always be there. Arnie's life was cut short by a deadly brain tumor. He had so much more to do. We had such plans. He was a very special individual. He was such a kind, generous, and loving person with a zest for life and an interest in people. He was a talker. He made friends easily, and he loved to share his passions. We shared a passion for photography. He loved and was very talented in photographing birds and animals. I enjoy photographing reptiles, flowers, and scenery. We loved to travel. Our trips took us to places that specifically gave us opportunities to capture nature. After each of our trips, we put together a Shutterfly book so we can enjoy the adventure again and again. And at the end of every year, we compiled a year in review in Shutterfly so we could relive the wonderful times we had throughout the year. He was an avid gardener and delighted in tending to our vegetable garden. The crops presented us with many photo op sessions. Arnie was a risk taker, and I am risk adverse. He pushed me beyond my comfort zone as we biked and hiked in the US, Ireland, and Canada. He loved Colorado for the beauty and the opportunities to explore. Before he retired in 2010, he worked in the pharmaceutical industry and traveled the world as vice president of international sales. He won industry awards year after year. He was an inventor and had several patents. One for the treatment of mental disorders in 2000, and another for the method and apparatus for determining high service utilization patents in 2001, neither of which I could understand. He took great pride in being a master mason for his lodge in Pennsylvania. I brought him to his first APAC conference in Washington, D.C. while we lived in Pennsylvania. He became a big supporter of APAC's mission and continued to support the organization when we moved to Colorado. JNF, Jewish National Fund, was also very important in his life. He was so proud of the work it does in Israel that we sponsored a bomb shelter along the Gaza Strip to protect Israelis and was looking forward to working on the water projects. We were hoping to go on a JNF trip to Israel in the future. We quilted together. I did the piecing, he did the quilting. We loved to play mahjong. At home, we often played Siamese mahjong and had regular couple games with friends. Arnie always seemed to get a lot of jokers. We worked on 500-piece puzzles of places we've been to. Most of the time, he did the sky and I did the ground, and the middle was up for grabs. He was a history buff with specialties in the Civil War, the American Revolution, World War I, etc. His knowledge and recall were uncanny. While working full-time, he was studying for his PhD in history. He was a collector of hats, rocks, pens, books, including first editions, did geocaching, and painted. So many things captured his imagination. He was a technology buff and a shopper. He loved his family with his whole heart. Jennifer, Fire, Russell, John, Michael, Michelle, Stacy, and grandchildren Shira, Maya, Naomi, and Charlie. He treasured the special connection he had with each grandchild. I remember when he first met Shira and Maya at Shira's 7th birthday party in Pennsylvania. I told them he was an artist. They asked him to draw a castle. He sat right down and drew them the most splendid of castles without blinking an eye. His latest passion was Legos, age 18 plus. When he messed up, Charlie would come to his rescue and redo the parts to make it work. I could go on, but for me, he was my heart. He always thought of me first, even when I told him not to. I told him about my blood cancer, Waldenstrom macroglobulinemia, diagnosed in 2005 when we first met, and it was a non-issue for him. We went to meetings and volunteered at the IWNF, the Waldenstrom's organization. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2018. He was there for me throughout my surgeries and recovery. Even in his last days, he cared that I wasn't overburdened with his illness. I would spend my days at the hospital or at the facility he was in, and he would tell me to take care of myself. Each morning I would come to visit and his eyes would light up and we would hold hands. Each day before I left, we would say, "I love you" to each other. We knew that his illness was terminal, but that didn't stop us from hoping for a miracle and we would be able to spend more time together. Arnie, you were suffering, but now rest in peace. I will always miss you.
I'd like to call up the grandkids to share. Shira, Maya, Naomi, and Charlie, will you come up and collectively share some words?
I knew Grandpa Arnie as an amazing artist, puzzler, history buff, gardener, Zionist, grandfather, husband, and father. His pictures were the best things you've ever seen, and he could tackle the sky of a puzzle like that. There were some noticeable changes, like the time I was convinced that he and Bubby had reached a compromise, one where she agreed to wear more colors, whereas he agreed to wear more black. But the fact that has been the foremost of my mind for these past few days is about the game of cubits. In cubits, you're given a small wooden board and a bunch of color-coordinated cubes. Each cube has a different pattern or shape on each side. The goal is to, on your board, recreate the image of a card with your cubes. Most of all, this game reminded me of him, not only because he and Bubby had taught it to me, although that was a significant part in this memory. The game reminded me of his wisdom, because he had to be able to replicate the card. It reminded me of his problem solving, because he had to continually turn the cubes until he got the right combination. And it reminded me of his kindness, because as a young girl learning this game, he always let me win. Well, only sometimes. I had to win sometimes too. Grandpa Arnie was genuine in a way that few people are. He was kind, quick-witted, passionate, and unabashedly himself. It was an absolute privilege to know him, and he will be sorely missed.
When Bubby and Arnie moved to Colorado, I started to get to know Arnie better. From our talks about his career to playing Mahjong, I always had a nice time with him. But one particular memory I have was when we went to Rocky Mountain Arsenal with Bubby and my brother too. Yes, we took good pictures and had a good time, but what I really admired about Arnie was his knowledge of birds. Any bird I pointed out, he could identify. Not only that, but at one point, the bird made a call. Arnie mimicked the call, and then the bird called back. That moment still amazes me to this day. And his bird photography is beyond incredible. Really, you guys should see it. Overall, I'm going to miss our long discussions about various subjects like books, Israel, his trips around the world, or history. He made my grandma so happy, and I'll miss his fun personality.
As some of you might know, Saturdays were a very special time of the week because that was the day that Shira and I would walk to Bubby and Grandpa Arnie's house to spend time with them. The one day in particular had stuck out in my brain. We were in his office on the second floor, and that day he and I were editing our bird photo album, one of the many projects that we were doing. As goes with every Saturday that I was in his office, he would teach me a lesson, something along the lines of making your work the best it could be,
or finish what you started. But this lesson has stood out for me. That day, he was teaching me an important life lesson to never give up. I was having a hard time spelling the words female and male because we have to identify that for our bird books. And Grandpa refused to let me use autocorrect. I tried to repeatedly spell spell these simple words. When finally I was able to spell them correctly, I looked up into his eyes, and what I saw was pride. See, all the lessons he taught me were important, but this one, to never give up, has become the greatest lesson any human being has taught me. FEMALE. I love you, Grandpa.
At the Shiva tonight, at Eileen and Arnie's home, we will have a chance for everyone to share stories. And as Eileen mentioned, the photograph, Shutterbug, or whatever. Shutterbug. Well, flies a bug, right? It's not like they have one album. How many albums? A couple of dozen, right? And each one has 100 pages, right? It's
They're all laid out at the house now.
They're wonderful. They're wonderful, and they capture some of that spirit, and certainly the love and that broad smile that we shine. Life has many ups and downs, and as the grandkids mentioned, learning how to fight through those struggles is a big part of our growing up. And there's a passage on page 3 that I think captures that in many ways. I think as we have Arnie's face in our mind's eye, this will, I hope you find it meaningful. It certainly does to me. We say together, birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, death our destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. For a moment, we're going to lower the casket. Then Feldman's has Earth from Israel, that appropriately from Israel, but not only that, it's from Jerusalem, and not only that, but from Mount Olives, the most sacred place in which a person can be buried. Nainatan Adonai Lakaki, he's Maranam Vora. Rukatara Elohim Marachalo Masha Yata et Tembitam. The Zamataka et Tembitugo, the Hemit et Tembadim. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who forms us in the divine image, who nourishes and sustains us in goodness. You have made us mortal, and yet you have implanted within us immortal life. We praise you, O God, judge of truth. Atagi bole elam Adonai Rav Lahoshia, mechakeh chaim mechesed, mechayei meitim barachamim rabim, somech noflim v'rofei cholim, umatir v'sorim, kayem emulat u'lishnei afar, michamocha ba'al gevorot, midom alach, melech memit u'mchayim atmit Yeshua. Baruch atah Adonai, notea b'tochenu chayei ulam. Eternal is your might, O God. All life is your gift. Great is your power to save. With love, you sustain the living, and with great compassion, you give life to all. You send help to the falling and healing to the sick. You bring freedom to the captive and keep faith with those who now sleep in the dust. We praise you, O God, who has implanted eternal life within us. Henning, if you bring this earth from Israel over, please rise. I'll give each of you a little bit. Whenever you're ready. Guys, come. You go, honey. Whenever you're ready. Of course. As we placed earth from Israel there. Now those who fulfill the mitzvah of Kavora, of making sure that his casket is covered with earth, the first couple of shovels are with the back to show our hesitancy. But then we turn the shovel over its face to fulfill that mitzvah, make sure that we won't leave here until we have covered his casket and protected his physical remains just as surely as we protect his spiritual remains in our heart. When you are finished shoveling, you don't hand the shovel to the next person, but rather let them take full physicality of that mitzvah by bringing that shovel out by themselves from the earth. There's lines on either side. Folks, would you like to participate from either side?